Hi, it's Julia Ray, and this is A Deeper Look. I believe the most important stories are the ones deep within us. The stories that make us feel alone, yet connect us when we're brave enough to tell them. Tune in every Wednesday to dive into the deep end together. Hi, everyone. It's Julia Ray, and I am so excited to take a deeper look at the life and career of Jesse Draper today. Jesse is a mother of 3 boys and founding partner of Halogen Ventures, which is focused on early stage investing in consumer technology and companies led by female and co-ed teams. She was an actress, an Emmy-nominated TV host, and now a fierce advocate for investing in women. Jesse is listed as one of Marie Claire's 50 most connected women in America, and that is just skimming the surface of your accolades and accomplishments. We were talking about Madonna earlier, and I was thinking about the circus. I feel so lucky to be connected to her. Jesse, thank you so much for joining me on A Deeper Look.
Jules, this is so fun because we're also friends. Like
Yes.
we're our my husband and her husband to be our best friends, and so I'm grateful you've come into our lives.
Yeah, likewise. I feel so fortunate to be able to have this conversation with you because you're someone that I look up to personally, and I just am so excited to dive deeper with you. I'm always so fascinated by the trajectory of someone's story, but I also want to start at the very beginning. So take me back to little Jessie.
Okay.
What did she want to be when she grew up?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that generous introduction. I actually was like, wow, I should have her rewrite my bio. That was really nice. Like, it sounds way better when she says it. Yeah, little Jessie. What did Jessie want to be?
Yeah, what did Jessie want to be when she closed her eyes and dreamt of her future?
It's funny. My aunt is like one of my best friends, and she has been a huge influence in my life. And she has this thing framed that I made when I was in first grade. And it was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I wrote, an actress like my Aunt Polly, or vice president of the United States, because back then I thought that vice president was a bigger word than president. So I thought it was bigger than president.
Yeah.
So that's why I just want to be clear. I would have gone for president had I understood at the age of, 7 or whatever, that vice president was actually second in command.
Well, the extra word makes it seem a little bit more important. I understand how you got there.
It's a big word.
So you wanted to be an actress, and you ended up becoming an actress.
I did.
Can you tell me a little bit about that journey for you?
Yeah. And I respect the acting profession so much. I love it. I actually think the things about it I miss the most are how collaborative the entertainment industry is. I feel like it's, everyone's in it for this same goal. And in what I do, it's similar, but it's much more transactional. And there it's like about the art, and you find these magic moments like in the space between, the art you're creating. And that's something I've lately been thinking I'm really missing in my life. I don't want to get back into acting, but I loved it. And so from the moment I played the Scarecrow in 8th grade, I knew I wanted to be an actress forever. No, my aunt was an actress. Her name's Polly Draper, and she was a successful actress on a TV show called 30 Something, which was kind of like the pre-Friends era. And so as a little girl, I grew up in Silicon Valley in the middle of like the tech boom, which like changed my life pretty significantly when I was kind of coming out of high school or in the middle of high school. And then all of a sudden there was this like strobe light on Silicon Valley. So all I knew really was entrepreneurs growing up, because my dad was an investor and had funded incredible entrepreneurs. And so that was truly all I knew. But also what I knew is that like there were no women in this industry. So I idolized my dad. I'm the oldest of 4 children. My mom would say, oh, Tim, you're going on another trip to a conference, take a kid. And I went all around the world with my dad to these incredible conferences. And I was always just this like little girl, young girl in rooms with men in suits. I feel weirdly comfortable with men in suits. But I started learning, like, I remember going to China with him and being sort of shunned to like the back room. And I was never allowed to be in the room with like the big men making the decisions. And I didn't like that. And I thought, oh, well, women aren't allowed to like be in these rooms. So how could I go into this industry? And, they say you can be, be what you see.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't see the women. So, I went into entertainment because my aunt was what I could see. My mom worked incredibly hard raising 4 children. I certainly couldn't do that. And she was an amazing mother. But my aunt was, I thought, oh, like that's a traditional path for a woman, like an actress. And my dad was always like, it's really tough to be successful as an actress.
Yeah.
But so that's why I wanted to be an actress. And, I went on to I was really focused on that. I like did a lot of theater in high school. I went to UCLA's School of Theater, Film, and TV. And I was just like gung-ho entertainment. I didn't know anyone in LA. My aunt lived in New York at the time. And I was just like networking with like whoever I possibly could, trying to get shows. I ended up doing a Nickelodeon show and that my aunt was involved with. I did. So I was on a Nickelodeon show for a couple of years. Did a bunch of movies, and I found that I got more jobs. Maybe it says something about my acting, but I got more jobs networking than I did auditioning. And I had this moment where I went to a cattle call somewhere on Sunset Boulevard, and it was for like a Transporter 2 or 3 movie. And I walked in. It's like Jason Statham and some producers, and I'd waited for 5 hours. I had my little sides, and they just looked at me and they were like, turn around. No, turn around. No, don't say your name. Don't speak. Okay, thank you. Goodbye. And I felt so yucky. And at the same time, because I was a Z-list celebrity, because I was on a Nickelodeon show, I was invited to this Twitter conference that was put on by Jeff Pulver at the Skirball Center. It was the very first Twitter conference. Tony Robbins spoke there and a bunch of other people. And it was like early tweeters or Twitters like on panels talking about how they got a lot of Twitter followers. And it was like the Kobe beef truck guy and then like some MMA fighters and like whoever had just like stumbled into a lot of followers essentially. But I started seeing this social media thing. And again, I feel very comfortable with men in suits. At that time, it had evolved to more like men in hoodies.
Yeah.
And there were a few women in this at this conference, but not a lot. Like I could count them, and I still know them today. I could count them on one hand. And so that gave me this idea where I was like, okay, I have another season of the Nickelodeon show. There's something cool going on in technology, and I really want to dig in there. It's where I really like find I'm just really inspired by all of these entrepreneurs. So I created the first tech talk show back in 2008, 2009, which is hard to believe, but truly it was the first because no one cared. And I had Elon Musk and Eric Schmidt from Google and all of these incredible entrepreneurs on my talk show. And so Elon, you're welcome to call me and thank me for your career. And
should send you a Tesla.
He and I, it's a terrible, I mean, it was like such a bad interview, and he and I think both wish it would die from the internet. But it was, we called it the Valley Girl Show. It was really fun. I tried to make it like very approachable. And then I interviewed all men. So I was like, I'm still stuck here. I'm still stuck here with all the men. And I love men, and I've been raised by men, but like I'm still stuck in the man's world. So I made an initiative to interview 50% women in tech. And that was the moment I realized I could really change something, because I was seeing all these early young entrepreneurs. It was Rebecca Minkoff, Jennifer Hyman from Rent the Runway, the Skim Girls, the Gilt Girls, and they were coming on my show. Julia Hartz from Eventbrite, Jessica Alba had just started Honest Company. And I was like doing something cool around women, and that I saw a huge shift. I was like, there are women in tech. They need media exposure so that women like me see them, and then they need funding. And so I started writing them small checks or negotiating sweat equity, created a nice little track record with some of those, and then raised my first fund from a lot of the guests on my show, actually.
Wow, that's incredible. So I
more
mean,
than you wanted to know. That was the long-winded answer.
no, but there was so much good stuff in there. I kind of want to extract from that how much and how important networking was to you, and how you might suggest to young entrepreneurs specifically to put themselves out there.
Yeah, I mean, today branding is more important than ever. I think it's hard to be a rising founder if you aren't putting yourself out there. But I do think, networking is pretty important. I'll start with networking. Networking made my career. I mean, both my acting career and my career today. I'm constantly meeting people. As a VC, it's like one too many. I have 85 investors. I have 78 companies. And then I'm constantly meeting new potential investors. I'm constantly meeting new companies. Like we had 10,000 new deals come through our inbox last year, started by women. And, I obviously can't meet with 10,000, but I try to get through them. We focus on kind of like what art verticals we're going after. And I think networking is everything. Today, I live in a world where I do feel like I can get in touch with everyone, and anyone can. You have LinkedIn, you have Instagram, you have someone didn't want to put me in touch with someone that I wanted to interview for diligence for this company yesterday, and I just found him on Instagram and was like, "Can I get on a call with you?" It's like you really have everyone at your fingertips, and it makes anything possible. But I'd say in your young career, and the most important thing I did was I didn't always know why I was meeting with these people when I was in my early 20s. And I would just set up meetings and have tons of meetings. And I ended up finding some really incredible advisors back then where I'm like, hey, here's what I want to do. I think I'm going to start this show. And they'd be like, okay, here's some advice I have. And then 6 months later, I'd be like, do you want to grab coffee again? Okay, did what you told me to do. And I did that for the show. And then you've created this sort of advisor for life where
Right.
I've built trust with them. I did what I said I was going to do. They're someone who can, help my career in some way. And I just say, when you're young, meet with as many people as you can. Ask a ton of questions. I asked all the stupid questions. And if you happen to Google my terrible talk show from back then, I asked all the stupid questions. Some 17-year-old just told me that I was in a mashup of all the stupidest things people had asked Elon Musk. And I was like, okay, well, that's my proudest moment. But thank you.
But I think it's a testament to investing in relationships, looking at relationships as investments as well.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you do now as a VC. Let's go back to basics, because I am not ashamed to say that before I started dating Matt, my now fiance, I really knew very little. Like anytime someone said they were in finance, I just I didn't care to listen. And I think I'm not alone in that. So what is it that you do as a venture capitalist, kind of VC for dummies, dumb it down to the very basics for us?
Yeah, well, I think that's very common. And it's specifically I see the world through gender. And so to hear you say that, I think that is typically how women look at it. They're like, if I don't fully understand it, I don't want to dive in completely. But what I would advise is dive in completely, and learn as much as you can. And I assure you, just as much, if not more, about finance than your significant other. We need men and women, but men are more have this gambling thing, and they're like, I feel good about this. And women, we take more calculated risk and we'll invest with so many more calculations. And so we need both of us, but I say take risk with your money, learn as much as you can about finance. But in terms of venture capital, I am the riskiest asset class, is what I like to sort of just start out with. We look for incredible people with ideas. Sometimes they, have a deck. Sometimes they just have a vision for some amazing company that's going to change the world. And it's a really inspiring place to be. I feel very lucky to be in this job. It's a lot of work, but it's really fun. And you're hearing about people building, everything from crazy new spaceships. I just heard about a new rocket engine that was really doing something kind of cool, to synthetic diamonds to, we're really focused on solving childcare now and doing a lot of interesting technologies and solving some government inefficiencies with these tech companies. And so we find these great early stage founders who can't grow their business without funding. They pitch us, they do their little dog and pony dance for us. And we say, okay, this is really interesting. I want to help you grow it. I get to know the founders. I write them a check. Typically, I'll own like 10% of their company and then help get them to the next level. So ultimately, what I do is I raise a pool of capital from investors, and I'll go raise a bunch of money and invest it based upon a thesis. My thesis is there has to be a female in the founding team. And right now we're focused on future of family. So how do you support the family at work, at home, the physical health of the family, and then the financial health of the family? And so we look for companies in that arena, and we invest upon that. So if you come to me with your business and you kind of fit my thesis right now, there's a good chance that you'll get a check from us. We are looking for founders who are ready for a 10-year marathon. It takes 10 years to build $1 billion business. And so we need to invest in $1 billion businesses. So if you're running a company that's like, you have one product, say it's like a, I don't know why I'm thinking of this, like a baby bottle or something. Like, I don't know if we'd invest in the baby bottle company, but we'd invest in the vision of all the other products that you're building, so that you become a company like our company Baby List, which is doing $1 billion GMV right now. And so we look for these early little popcorn kernels and we help them pop. That's like, hopefully. But the reason this is so risky is we're the earliest asset class. So when you hear about like Uber or Google or all these companies, they've taken years to get that big.
Right.
We try to find them early. And so we'll do like 20 to 30 deals per portfolio, knowing that a large percent will just go under. Like that's the risk. But what we do is then identify who's fantastic in our portfolio, and we just double down on them and help them succeed, because you only need one or a couple to return the whole fund, hopefully many times over.
So interesting. And I thank you for breaking that down. I think it's really helpful for not only me, but listeners that aren't as familiar with, when they hear what a venture capitalist is, they can now touchstone on your answer. So that's great. Thank you so much for that. Knowing that it's a long game, it's a marathon, there has to be so much rejection and so many hard days or hard months, I imagine. How would you say an entrepreneur should balance celebrating the wins versus taking the losses to heart?
I love that question. Thank you for that question. It's funny because when you say hard days, I see it both sides. I see it on the sides of me supporting an entrepreneur, and I see it on the sides of me fundraising for my own fund, because ultimately I'm also an entrepreneur. And, I think we do have there is this thing I call, okay, so say I'm funding a new founder. This has happened twice in our, over 100 investments we've made in 78 companies. And I call it the egomaniac gene, where they're too excited about the wins, and then they're celebrating the wins, they're tweeting the wins, they're posting the wins. And I'm like, okay, cool, but your revenue's not where it's supposed to be, and the business isn't going as well as you think it is. And we had one founder write a book that was something about I don't know, I guess I shouldn't say too much, but it was something about building this awesome company. And I was sort of like, where's the awesome company?
Right.
Because the book's out, but where's the awesome company? So I'm very wary of that, who wants to be the star versus who's really in it to build the best business. So I'd say it's a nice balance. And I think in terms of brands today, you need to grow your brand at a really nice pace with your company, because if your brand blows up, we had a company just go bust recently. Your brand blows up and you can't deliver on that.
Yeah.
The brand looks awesome, but then your investors are very unhappy and your company's going under because you just aren't keeping up with the pace of growth. So you actually have to kind of find that nice medium. And it really does take like 7 to 10 years to grow a thoughtful business. And you should be focused on, profitability and a nice balance of growth and just how do we steadily grow. So I'd say celebrate the wins for sure. Some wins, like, it's a long road. It's not a straight line uphill. And it is brutal. I mean, I have a company right now that there's nothing in the bank account, and this girl is amazing. That's the kind of founder you want to invest in. It'll never go under because she's just going to figure something out. And you want to invest in these founders who it's like, okay, what happens if you run out of money? Like, how do you keep the company going? How do you take it to the next level? Are you super scrappy? And, she's having the hardest time, but we're so close to something massive.
Yeah.
And you just, when she has that moment, like, I can't wait to celebrate that because it's been such a journey. But then there's time, like, you don't want to celebrate everything. You don't need to post everything. And in fact, you will probably want to protect your business a little, not necessarily post everything. But now I'm just getting in the weeds.
What about the losses part? Because I think that's
yeah.
Even this girl that you were talking about, like, she sounds like she's super scrappy, but like, what is your advice to somebody who maybe on the opposite end of that egomania is perhaps a little bit too hard on themselves and is struggling with imposter syndrome? All that we're bombarded with these days with social media can take such a toll on your mental health when you are comparing journeys. So like, when do you know also, now this is like totally prompting another question to me, when do you know when to cut your losses as an entrepreneur and walk away, or maybe think like, I need to look at this as a lesson learned instead of my launch pad?
Yeah. It's hard as an investor because you don't want anyone to go under. But there have been times where it gets to a point that I'll just say, it's also like, I'm telling you, I have all these companies. I can only spend time with so many too. So it's this time issue where you're like, I want to help them, but they're not doing well enough. I really want to go help the ones that are winning because they're going to return my fund. And sometimes there's a moment where it's just not working. Like,
right.
The product isn't selling, something's not fitting. They can't raise any more money because people aren't seeing the vision. You've been trying for years. And sometimes, and that's part of venture capital. Like, you have to lose a lot of money to make money. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And you try to, take this calculated risk and be thoughtful and de-risk in every way you can. But sometimes you do have to say to the founder, hey, you know what? Let's just, like you're saying, cut our losses. Let's just sell it. Let's see what we can get back for, the patents or whatever, the brand, whatever you may have, and see if we can get anything back to investors. It's not going to be $1 billion business. I think I am too optimistic, but you have to be optimistic in this business. And there are times that I probably should have said that sooner. Now I just am like queen of, like, every founder could probably quote me where I'm just like, what's plan A? What's plan B? What's plan C? What's plan D? Yeah. Like, you need 4 plans. I don't want one plan. Like, okay, what if that doesn't happen? And the founders who are not great are the ones who only have plan A,
Yeah.
It's never going to be
the way you thought it was.
The way you thought it was. Like, one of the best deals we've had was this company Squad app. When I invested in Squad app, it was called, I don't even remember, Olabot. And it was an audio technology that plugs into the Amazon Alexa. And this was 6 years ago. It plugs into Amazon Alexa. And I was like, that's cool. We're going to be like talking to the ceiling. It's going to like plug in. This is so cool. This is like very futuristic. I love it. Then it wasn't working. And so they turned it into a social media app for Gen Z called Molly, which was an issue for like a multitude of reasons. One being Molly is a drug. And like, I can't even like tell you, like, we were like, what? Like, why are you calling it that? That wasn't working, but that was a completely different business than the one I had invested in. And then it evolved because they realized they were listening to the customers. This founder never needed to be the star. She was so incredible. And she would like just be like, okay, the customers, she'd be obsessive about the problems in the company. This isn't working, but we seem to have some traction here. So we're going to go in this direction. Now we're Molly. I'm like, okay. Molly lasted about 6 months. Then she found she had created this technology for screen sharing. She was the first person to create a screen sharing technology, and it was in the beginning of COVID, where you could turn around your camera and watch like a YouTube video while connected to everyone on your phone. So you could take selfies with all your friends in the YouTube video, and it was like this cool thing. It blew up really quickly, as you can imagine, during COVID.
Yeah.
And then we sold it to Twitter before the madness, before all the, I don't know what I'm supposed to call it now, X.
Yes.
I just laugh because that's the kind of founder I want to invest in. Like, that is not the company I invested in. Like, that was a completely different company, but she knew that she needed to see this through. And if something wasn't working, she was obsessively listening to the customers and like, that's not selling, but this is. So how do we, listen to that? And I think that's, like, you need a founder who's going to pivot, who's open to change. The worst founders are the ones who are like, there's only one way to go,
Well, and I think what a great story for, I think, anyone to hear, but specifically the younger generations who are raised in this instant gratification era.
Yeah.
And instead of assuming that things will work and things will work now, knowing that you need to put in the work and kind of look at it from a bird's eye perspective, and you're just putting one foot in front of the other. Even for the billion-dollar companies.
Right.
That's all they were doing.
Yeah.
And I think we often forget that. We see the, Sarah Blakely Spanx headlines, and it's very hard to kind of deduce from that what actually went on in her 10 years, right? And it could have been longer. I don't know. But it's hearing those stories, I think, is so important to remember that. And also just like put your head down and do the work. And that's when the gold comes. It's not when you are just looking for the gold. Yeah,
completely. It's, you put your head down, you do the work. I know we are in this instant gratification. It's like everyone thinks it's like Uber. Like everything is Uber to people now. It's like, oh, I can just order it. I can just order it. And it's like, no one's going to know how to do the work.
Right. Well, and I always wanted to bring up your Medium article, which I'm assuming you didn't know would go viral. Like another case of just like putting stuff out there and just putting your head down. And you wrote this amazing article in 2020 called "Investing in Women Isn't a Fucking Charity." If you're listening, please go read it after you're done listening to the episode. I want to know, because it's been 4 years since you wrote that article.
Oh my God, I can't believe that. That's crazy. Yeah.
What, if anything, has changed about the landscape that you're in since writing that article?
Not enough has changed. So just for those of you listening, I wrote this article out of a moment of frustration. I was so frustrated because here I am peddling my little venture capital fund focused on women, and everyone's sort of saying to me like, oh, it's like charity. You're investing in women. Cute. And I'm like, no, actually, we're like planning on building billion-dollar businesses, and stop looking at us like charity. And so I sit on this weird line where I don't want to be seen as a nonprofit, but women think of women, men have passed down the pocketbooks from generation to generation. And women were taught to give away money before they were taught to invest it. And like, I think it's a major issue for society. So when you ask what's changed, not enough, but I think that's something that I would add to the article is just, women, make sure you're not just giving away your money. Like if you're going to give away your money, why wouldn't you invest in, a company run by a woman or a venture fund? Like we only manage 2% of venture capital funding. Women only manage 2% of venture capital funding, and billions are going into venture capital. And if you want to see women at the top, you have to make that change and think about what you're investing in, what you're buying. Unfortunately, those statistics have not increased. We're still at about a little less than 2%. I think a lot of things need to change, and I'm working on them, and I think a lot of women are working on them. I think a lot will have changed in the next 10 years because of what is being set up now for society. But I even have trouble now. 2 days ago, and this is like fresh off my mind, so hopefully it goes okay to share this story. But like 2 days ago, I've been working on, like, one of the issues is for my investors, I pitch individuals founders who've sold their companies for $1 billion, small private wealth management firms, and then institutions, which would be like endowments and schools and pension funds and things like that. In order to access the pension funds and things like that, you have to be in touch with an advisor who manages billions of dollars of capital. And often it's sort of like one person sitting on top of these piles of gold that I have to access. I've been working on this one guy for 2 years, and he just like wouldn't give me the time of day. He's like, yeah, cute, little fun, blah, blah, blah. And I saw him. I knew he was coming to this conference. And what you do is you keep updating these people and you're like, hey, here's how my fund's doing now. They want to get to know you over a couple of years.
Okay.
So I go to this conference last week and I'm like, I texted him. I said, hey, I'm here. Do you have 15 minutes? And he goes, no, you can meet me tomorrow night at 9:30 p.m. So any girl listening right now, like, what are you thinking? Because I'm getting heebie-jeebies from my 20s when guys ask me for drinks at 9:30 p.m. But I don't think it's like that. I'm also like not as hot as I was in my 20s. So I don't think he was asking that. And I was just like, this is so bizarre. Why can't he meet me during the 2-day conference? And I ended up bumping into him and I go, do you have 5 minutes? He's like, no, I have 4. And he was like very intense. And I was like, okay, well, do I need to go to this thing or could we just meet some other time? And he's like, I think you should come to this thing. I'm like, 9:30, is there a dinner? He's like, yeah, no, you can't come to the dinner. You can come after. So I'm like, okay. So I show up and I was like, I got to do the work. I'm going to show up. We'll see what happens. I'll give it an hour, even though it's late at night and I have 3 kids, but I'm working my butt off and I'm going to make this thing happen. And it was at the top of Le Petit Hermitage, the hotel in Beverly Hills. And all I'm thinking is like, didn't some Harvey Weinstein shit go down here? And I'm like, okay. And I show up and I'm wearing my heels. And I say that because I walk up and it's like one of those super low tables, like where they're like practically sitting on the ground. And it's 14 dudes, 5 bottles of wine in. I've showed up at 9:30 and I'm towering over this hilarious table that's like out of a movie. And I'm like, this is what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
So when you ask, like, has it changed? Like, I literally just dealt with this 2 days ago.
Wow.
And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. The good outcome of this story is I was at my wit's end. And, you were saying, talking about imposter syndrome. I feel that every day. And I'm trying to like do more like, I love myself. I love you, Jesse. Like, these things you're supposed to do that therapy tells you or whatever. And I'm trying to just build my confidence. But that particular night, I was like exhausted. It'd been a 2-day conference. I was like, why couldn't he have invited me to the fucking dinner, man? Sorry, I don't know if I can swear on this. I was like, why didn't he invite me to the dinner? This is ridiculous. And he comes up and he was very lovely. And he said, hey, how's it going? Tell me what's going on. And then he kind of looked at me and he goes, I'm realizing maybe I should back some female managers. Like, because he's looking around at this embarrassing situation. And It's like, it needs to be apparently that obvious to people that I'm the woman who's walked in, who was not invited to the dinner. And he's spent all this time with them. And I'm like doing the same thing as them. And just to add a little fuel to the fire there, I was so mad because I knew 2 of the people there. And I said, did you back this guy? And he's like, yeah. I was like, the only 2 deals doing well in his portfolio I gave him. One was Squad Up, which I just talked about. Yeah. And the other one is this one doing $1 billion. And I was like, just so you know, you can thank me for those deals. Like, I was like, he's not that good a manager. Like, if you're backing him, like, this just makes me so mad.
Yeah.
And we had a great conversation. Next day, I woke up to a text that said, let's find you some money. And it was like, I almost cried, truly, because it's been such a battle. And ultimately, we still have to find the money. But that was an unlock for me. And so it's still a man's world, and I love men. We need men. I have 3 little boys who and a new male puppy in my house.
I was going to say, you chose a boy dog too.
But we need everybody, but we need men to like see that obvious factor too. You know?
I mean, it seems like it should be glaringly obvious when you tell this story. But I think having women like you at the helm in this industry, knocking down doors, because that sounds like what it's going to take to make it glaringly obvious, even though it should be, is so important. Something that, while I'm listening to you, because you have experience as an entrepreneur and are an entrepreneur, but now you have this fund and like you're a VC, how do you like delineate from, you know, when you're listening to a pitch, being an advisor and supporter or feeling like you want to like help run with an idea? Like, how do you decipher those?
The problem is, and it's taken lots of practice, like I want to help everyone.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing for me is that the majority of my job is saying no. And it's like, you know, I mean, you've had some incredible fandom, I'm sure, because you were on this TV show. And it's like, I go to these conferences, and because I'm one of, you know, say a handful of female investors, they always have me come speak to the rooms of all female founders. And it's like walking into like your biggest fan base, but you've said no to every single one of the women in the room. And I want to help them all. And I really do try. Like, I'll be like, I can make an introduction for you. But ultimately, your time is your, you know, biggest asset. And so I have to really pick and choose which companies I'm going to lean in towards. And, you know, for me, I'd say the number one factor I look for is openness, and, you know, some might call it coachability, but just the idea of, you know, I was talking about Esther Crawford from Squad, like someone who's open to all the ideas, understands it's not going to be a straight line, is open to feedback, but still has the vision for their company. Because when you're a founder or CEO, like people are going to give you so much feedback, and you still need to like go in one direction. You know, you can't have your head spinning. So I really look for, that's the number one thing. And I don't even know how to perfectly articulate it, but just someone who's open, coachable, and easy to work with, because it's going to be 10 years and it's not always good. I sit on the boards sometimes, and it's hard to sit on boards. I hear so many people who are like, I want to sit on boards. I'm like, you can sit on my boards, because you are like, I want to be friends with all the founders, but as a board member, you're turning the mirror around and you're saying, here's all the things you're doing wrong. And I disagree with all these things, and we still have to be friends, and I still have to figure out how to work with you, but you're going to be pissed at me for a minute.
Right.
And it's a lot of just like very intense conversations. And then in addition, you have to get along with all the other board members, and it's hard to like stay friendly with the founders when you're working with them. So you need someone who's open, coachable, reasonable, you know, just an easy to work with personality type, who puts the company first, who says, you know what, maybe I'm not the best leader now that we're at a Series B and I need to bring in a better operator, or I'll do what's best for the company. Because the biggest failures I've seen are when the founder gets in the way and won't accept like what's happening.
Yeah. I think that there's this real balance of ego in this industry, clearly. And you talked about how you experience imposter syndrome, which is so wild, because when I look at your accolades, right, like when we always look at each other, we see so different than how we talk to ourselves.
Jules, that's so nice, because I just have to say, like, first of all, you're incredibly impressive. And I feel like right now, I feel so badly about myself.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. It's something I'm really working on. Like, I really am doing this thing that my therapist told me. She's like, you put your hand on your chest and you say, I love you, Jesse. And you say, I love you, Jesse, in a lot of different ways. You say, I love you, Jesse. Yeah. I love you, Jesse. I love you, baby girl, Jesse. And I'm just like, this sounds so crazy, but I really need it.
You need it. I mean, I need stuff like that. In fact, like, this sounds silly, and my therapist didn't tell me to do this. I just started doing it because it was kind of the only thing that like reminded me who the F I am. Like, because there's like moments where I'm just like, no, remember who you are. Like, because those negative voices in our head are not telling the truth at the end of the day. And I always think of like, I go back to certain things that I know remind me who I am. Like, right. Like this sounds crazy too. Like I'll go back to an interview that I know I like just crushed and like watch it. And it sounds trivial or stupid and it sounds almost like borderline narcissistic. But actually, I think in this world where I feel like we're in an epidemic of mental health because of social media, because who cannot compare themselves when they open their phone? It's just a world of comparison. And I think there are these practices that we need to do and focus on that do remind us who we are, because then we don't have the battery to then knock down the doors that you're knocking down. Like then where do we tap into those tools that actually get us to the places we need to be?
Totally.
So like I think that's so important, you know, even hearing you say that you struggle with imposter syndrome. It's like it's just so mind-boggling that women like you are even facing this mental health crisis that I think it really is.
It's a tough. Yeah, it's tough. I think also like, you know, when I look at success and my vision of like what success is, like I don't even see success. I just see like, okay, I have this next thing to do. Or I think also I'm very empathetic, and with my founders, I feel their pain too. And it's a tough market. So everyone's sort of dealing with different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like very poorly about myself. I like how you said that the voices in your head aren't telling the truth.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, those little liars.
They are. They're liars.
Like, how do you just shut up those little liars?
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, and you were just touching on destination fixation, which is something I struggle with too. Because like I was always like, oh, when I get my big break, right? Like when I was little, when I get my big break, it'll all be easy and smooth sailing, right? Like, well, there is no big break. No. It's not coming. It's not a thing. Yeah. Because once you get that big break, it's always going to be about what's next.
Yes.
You never reach a point where you're just smooth sailing. And so if you don't, I mean, like it's so cliche, but like if you don't find joy in the journey, then like, what are you doing it for? Yeah. You know? And so like the destination fixation, I think does come from even what you were talking about with your egomaniac founders, right? Yeah. Like this desire to show that you've done something. Yeah. And like, well, what if you just did it for you? You know, like I'm still making music and at this point I'm doing it for me. And if a lot of people like it, great. Yeah. And if 20 people listen, great.
I'll listen, and everyone listening will listen, and everyone listening should share all of her music with at least 10 friends.
But it's like, where also is the joy of making things and creating to create, right? Like going back to the basics of all of these things. And I think when you're telling me about the entrepreneurs that succeed, that's what they're doing. Yeah. They're actually focusing on how can I make this great? How can I make this the best thing for the greater good, right? They're actually trying to figure out a puzzle piece instead of trying to make their name shinier in a marquee.
So true.
And that's a really cool like thing that I'm going to walk away with today. It's like a nice reflection that I just like, I'm like, yeah, it's actually about doing the work.
It's about the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's little wins, you know?
Yeah.
You're not going to get a big break, guys. I hate to break it to you. There's not going to be a big break.
You
got to keep working. You got to work. Yeah. Like look at J-Lo. Like she works harder than anybody.
Right.
She just works and works and works. And I mean, I wonder what she thinks was her big break. And I bet she's still trying to, you know, I know she's really been hung up on, not that I'm friends with J-Lo, but I'd love to be. But I know I've heard she's very hung up on the fact she hasn't won an Oscar or something. Mm-hmm. And she really, really wants to win an Oscar. And so that's like what she's been fighting for so long. Yeah. And so it's like we're all striving to be, you know.
Even J-Lo.
Yeah, even J-Lo.
Yeah.
Who like I look at it and I'm like,
dang, girl.
Yeah.
You done good.
You got the body, you got the skin, you got the work ethic. Like you got it all.
Yeah, seriously. What more do you want? Leave some for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Take a seat. I have to ask you this question because you are a fourth generation VC. Mm-hmm. And part of my desire to have these conversations is to dive into times when people may have felt misunderstood or unfairly judged, because I certainly have at times in my life. Have you ever felt that your legacy has led you to feel misunderstood or unfairly judged in these rooms? Mm-hmm. And do you feel a certain responsibility to rise to the opportunity?
It's interesting. I fall in this weird club of offspring of successful fathers. And I am a fourth generation venture capitalist. And I actually was just talking to a couple guys who, one dad is a famous football player, and the other just ran this big company. And we were talking about how you really feel like you have to perform in a certain way by being that, like, there are these weird expectations of you just as a family member. And it's very stressful. It's like a lot of pressure. I think it's one of the reasons I don't live in Silicon Valley. I live in Los Angeles, and everyone thinks I live there, but I've been here for 20 years, just so everyone knows I live in LA. Went to UCLA, love it. And I love my dad and I love my grandfather, and never knew my great-grandfather, but he seems great too and started our family on a great path.
Yeah.
I used to I feel safe talking to you about it as a friend, and I'm trying to speak about it more. I obviously come from a background of privilege, and I had opportunities that not everyone's given, but also everyone's born into a different place. And I shouldn't be judged for that. I have been very judged for that my whole life. It makes me feel like I have to work harder. Not only do I have to work harder by being a woman, I have to work harder to prove myself because people judge me. And I've walked into, I don't even care talking about this openly. I walked into the UCLA endowment, and I went to UCLA to pitch them for my fund. And the woman goes, "Why doesn't your dad just write you a $50 million check?" And I go, "Oh, sorry. Is that something you ask everybody? Or does your dad write you a $50 million check? I'm clearly here fundraising, doing the same thing as everybody else." Right. And I get so many questions like that. And it's fine. Fundraising is a very humbling thing because you're going, kind of putting your hands out and telling them about your aspirations and how you want to change the world or whatever it may be. But people really do judge you. And I think people just have a lot of preconceived notions of being a fourth generation of anything. But I don't know what else to be because that's where I've come from,
right.
And so, yeah, people, my whole life, I also know now, when I walk into a room, if I am fundraising, that's when it kind of comes up the most. If I am fundraising, I know immediately if they have already prejudged me. And I do my best in those meetings, but I'm also there's a lot of money out there and I'm going to go find the right capital if that's how they feel about me and won't even give me a chance. Because people do judge, and there's a lot of information out on the internet, and people don't look through someone's entire background. They are "Oh, she's a rich kid" or something. Right. And that may not be true. I still have to work. My siblings still have to work. And there's a lot of people who are in a position like me who gambled it away, did drugs, went and I don't know what, but right. I think
didn't devote their lives to funding and female founders. You've worked really hard.
Yeah. And I think I feel really lucky to have a dad I can call and say, "Hey, I'm dealing with this weird situation," But I also think with women in particular, there's this princess complex where I don't think my brothers get it as much. Yeah. Men, it's you pass down your heritage, and you look at in Asia, I don't know why this is what's popping up, but have you seen your Jiro Dreams of Sushi? It's
yes,
it's all about how he's passing his business down to his son, and right. His son is learning to take over his business, and it's just this very well respected thing. And for some reason, I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me. I'm not a victim here at all, but I don't like being judged. No one likes being judged, right.
I think being misunderstood is probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to face. Beyond, failing at something, perceived failure, yeah. But feeling misunderstood and unfairly judged because of that misunderstanding, I think is a really hard human experience because it's a mischaracterization of who you are.
Totally.
So I wanted to ask you that question because I have to imagine there is this immense pressure with privilege. But you so clearly have taken the bull by the horns and said, no, I am going to work my butt off and make sure that I'm not only creating opportunity for myself, but for other women.
Yeah.
So kudos to you. I do want to talk about the next generation because you have 3 beautiful boys who are just so sweet and your new dog. But do you find there is, as someone who is not yet on the journey of motherhood, is there such a thing as balance as being a working mom?
Oh man, it's so hard. I think every mom is like, yeah, no, have kids. But like, it is really hard. I have an incredible partner, my husband, Brian, who you know, and I couldn't do it without him. And we are equal partners. Not all households are like that. And most does fall on the woman. And I've struggled even just with identity because my mom was a stay-at-home mom taking care of 4 kids and my dad was working, and I feel like I have to do both of those things and I can't. And I've actually had to really let go of the stay-at-home mom piece. Like I have to accept, like, I'm not going to make dinner for my kids every night. It's actually impossible for me to do that. I will do it as much as I can. We actually do breakfast. I can make them breakfast in the morning. That's like what I can do. But it's a really tough balance. And there's days where you just have to blow up your calendar and you're like, I have a sick kid and I just have to blow up my calendar. But then you have these beautiful moments too, where you realize everyone's human. And I think COVID did that to us too, where kids are in the background of Zooms. But there is this wonderful woman, Lisa Amster, who is at Morgan Stanley, and she is a private wealth manager. And she was representing one of my investors, and she came. Like, I was supposed to meet with her and she was doing diligence on my fund for her client. And I said, okay, I'm going to pitch you, it was like set up on a Tuesday or whatever. And she said, okay, great. We had it scheduled. And then something happened where we didn't have childcare. My nanny didn't come in or something. And I texted her and I said, look, I really don't want to miss this meeting. My kid's at home. I don't have childcare. I'm not sure what to do. We can reschedule, or I can just like bring him or something. She's like, I'm coming over to your house. We'll keep the meeting. And I pitched her with my son running around in the background. And it was like the most human moment I think I've ever had in terms of just being like, look, you got to do what you got to do. And I'm still working. And she gave me a break, and I just appreciate that so much. But I think it's important to talk about the fact you have kids, and I'm trying to do as much as I can. I have literally taken meetings at my kids' baseball games. Also, baseball for 7 and 8 year olds is like very long and a lot of practices. And so there's a lot of time. So I am watching them, but I also will be like, I can't meet you unless you come to my kids' baseball game. And I think you find the balance. And then also it's made me the best at prioritization. Like, what are my priorities? I reschedule and rebalance my kind of priorities every month, every week, and every day. And while I don't want to cancel things day of, sometimes you have to. Sometimes you're like, okay, well, this isn't going to help me accomplish this goal. This is like not an important meeting. I need to move that, and that's going to be okay because we have this fire to put out. And that's okay. I don't take kind of like excess meetings. I used to just meet people for the sake of meeting people, and I just don't have time to do that anymore, unfortunately. So it helps you prioritize. You realize what's important, and you realize what moves the needle. It helps you cut a lot of corners. And so I don't know. I think it makes you smarter and more whole as a person in a lot of ways. But then there's some, great people who've chosen career for their lives, and they live very fulfilled lives too. So I don't know, but there's always balance. You just have to find the thing for you. Right now, I'm waking up at 5 a.m., except this morning because I went to Madonna till 1 a.m. And Madonna, stop being fucking late because I'm a mom of 3. But it was worth it. But I've been waking up at 5 and doing this like journaling thing and finding space and time for myself. And I think that's going to be important to me for the next couple of years.
I love that. As your boys grow up, what do you hope they learn from their mom?
I mean, the joke's on me, right? Like, I invest in women and I have 3 little boys. And I hope that they are very empowered. Today, I'm really proud. I do think they're empowered. Like, one of them brought me this Berenstain Bears book to read. And he said, "Mommy, this is called No Girls Allowed. That's so mean."
Oh.
And I was just like, my job here is done.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
You did it.
So hopefully they're just very empowered. We need the next generation of men to look at women as equals.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. To go back to my first question and go back to little Jessie, besides telling her that the president is actually more important than the vice president, what would you say to little Jessie now?
I think be confident in your own abilities. Just be confident in your own abilities.
Love that.
Buy a Google stock, Amazon. You know, there's going to be this thing called the internet. Like, you know, there's a couple tips I'd give her, but I'd say just be confident. Like, you know, little girls they like lose confidence. And I feel like when I think back, I'm like, I was so meek and just worried to stand up and be myself.
Yeah. It's funny. When we need the confidence of a 5-year-old, we're 35.
Yeah.
And
It's true.
it's like we need to go back to our younger selves and steal that. You know?
Yes.
Steal a page. So yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for joining me, Jessie.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. This was so fun. I forgot that we were filming and recording.
Good. That's the best thing to hear. If you are loving these conversations, please share with a friend or 5 and leave me a review because I would love to hear your feedback. And if you have an idea for a future guest, head on over to our Instagram @DeeperLookPod and comment who you'd like to get to know on a deeper level. New episodes drop every Wednesday. I'll see you next week on A Deeper Look.